tell you about Andela. I'm out of breath because I ran up. I'm the crazy person who put a big sign on the job board that says I'm training 100,000 young Africans to be software engineers. And the way that we're doing that is by applying bootcamp-style learning and then paying young Africans to learn how to code. And we need a lot of help. We are growing very rapidly. We're venture-backed, for-profit, but very social mission-driven. It's the most amazing mission of my life, the most amazing startup experience, and also the most amazing startup team. My CEO took his last company public. My COO was working for President Clinton for 8 years at Clinton Global Initiative on Africa, initiatives directly with the president. Our VP of External Affairs worked for President Obama as his speechwriter for 5 years. It's an all-star team, and I could go on and on, but I think I'm probably out of time already. All I want you to do is go to andela.co, check us out, or just Google Andela. It's like Mandela, just chop off the M. Names are cool that way. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Hi, hello. I just want to invite you guys to MagmaConf this year. It's a conference down in Mexico. It's the biggest Ruby and Rails conference in Mexico. Last year we had Santiago Pastorino and Sandy Metz there. So this year the only confirmed keynote is Ron Evans so far. I promise you will have a nice time. It's on the beach. We have plenty of networking and fun time. So, and also the talks. The talks are really good. So if you want to come and meet Mexico, you're welcome to do it. I have a few discount codes with me. So if you want to go, just find me with this like funky jacket. And I'll be happy to give you a code. And yeah, that's it.
Thank you very much.
And away we go. So, Nelson Mandela one time said that there is no keener revelation of a society's soul than the way it treats its children. And though unfortunately we lost him about a year and a half ago, I want to introduce you to two people that are trying to carry that tradition forward in South Africa. The first one is Mandla Magagula. Now, Mandla knows what it's like to grow up in an underprivileged background. He grew up in a small town in South Africa called Piet Retief, in a township. This is a picture of his township. You're talking about basically a small shack with a dirt floor. His school was poor. So poor, in fact, and I'm not making any of this up, they didn't have running water at the school, let alone computers to work on as kids. When he had but at the same time, Mandela had this thirst for knowledge, and so what he would do is literally look for anything to read because there wasn't that much reading material. And so he would at times even go to things like religious tracts and chick tracts that missionaries were bringing because there was nothing else he could read. Yet, through all that, and through luck and the ability to basically, some smarts and everything else, he got a scholarship and went to the University of Pretoria. The amazing thing was, though, he went there and decided to major in computer science, having never touched a computer. A few years later, after a lot of sacrifice, including not even having enough money at times for basic toiletries, he walked out of there with a master's degree, which to me, I'm sorry, that was really impressive. And not only that, today he is a software engineer in Johannesburg for a local consultancy called Driven Spark. About a year ago, he decided he wanted to do something to fix the future. And so it started with a very, very small experiment. And he called it Sosonke Rising. Sosonke it's a Zulu word. And the idea was take 6 kids from a township, mostly middle school to high school age, the values of extreme programming, and teach them how to code Python. The program has been very, very successful. From the 6, they've grown to 12. And I was there last February and had a chance to work with these kids, and it was absolutely it was humbling, it was amazing to just watch these kids learn everything from their loops and the basic data structures and just see the sparkles in their eyes around it. Now, the other person I want to introduce you to is Lydia Abel, and she's the one in the pink in this picture here. And she is part of a group called ORT. They're based in Cape Town. And what they do, and they're all run by women, which is makes it absolutely just fantastic is that they use robotics, specifically right now Lego Mindstorms, to basically take a lot of kids from disadvantaged backgrounds who are behind in their math and in their reading and different things like that, and they use the exercises with the Mindstorms, they use that to help level them up with their reading and their writing and all of those other skills. Both of these are not for profit. They're not making a dime off of this other than basic living expenses. In fact, Mandla does this as a side thing. He still has a day job. They're grassroots. They need your help. How could you help? The simplest way is this. If you have a laptop that's 10 years old or newer, think about donating it to the program. When the cohort started for Sasonke Rising, at the beginning of this year, they had 12 students and 3 laptops. Through Ruby Fusa, we actually helped to get them enough so that now every student has one, but we're going to grow the class. If you have a job where you can work remotely and you want to do something with a purpose, or if you want to live on a stipend and go down there, consider coming down to Cape Town and helping Lydia establish a Sasonke Rising in Cape Town. Right now, they only have a presence in Johannesburg. If you're traveling to South Africa, think about bringing some laptops when we have extra ones to bring down. Or, if you want to as well, come down and join us at Ruby Fusa. I happen to be one of the co-organizers. I would love to tell you about it if you'd like to learn more about it. It is in February of every year, so you missed the current one. And we also have a Ruby D Camp, which is an unconference ZA. I'm a co-organizer on that. It is going to be probably this August. Come talk to me. There's information right here. You can contact me at my Twitter handle or Mandla's Twitter handle. Again, Sasonke Rising, Nyabunga, Baya Donkey, and thank you.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm going to talk about collection routing in Rails 5. That's the title. So collection routing means today if you want to, for instance, delete 2 posts from your blog, you have to actually do 2 HTTP requests, delete post 1 and delete post 4, because there is no such thing as delete many or destroy many, or you cannot pass, for instance, delete post 1,4. But this might be a good idea. Why not? And not just for deleting many posts at once. Maybe you want to get many posts at the same time or update them, and maybe you want to pass a range of IDs, something like that. So this might sound like a good idea, but it's not going to be in Rails 5. And that's the end of the... No, that's not. No, really what this is about is how working on Rails core is not very different than working with your co-workers at your job, that sometimes people have good ideas and they seem good, and then you start implementing them, and then you delve into them, and then at the end you get the implementation, and then maybe you think, well, maybe it's not really worth it, or maybe people don't really use that as much. And this is kind of what happened in this case. This is just one of the examples. The initial idea, the first that I found about this sort of concept came, David in 2011, he had this post saying, hey, maybe it would be nice if we had an update many, and inside a transaction we could be able to update many posts at once. And so things evolved from there, and there was a student of Google Summer of Code with Rails that actually was dedicated to this. But then as he started working on this problem that, from a very small idea becomes big, suddenly many questions came up, such as, well, what is the regular expression that we're going to use? Can we use a comma? Are we going to accept ranges? What if you put a range and then there's an item missing? How are we going to call these methods? Destroy all, destroy some, destroy many, these kind of things. How are we going to deal with generators? Do we need a generator for JBuilder too? So all these questions, had to be somehow answered, and he did a great job. And then this, all this code actually became a pull request against Rails, and you can actually go and take a look at this pull request. But then, because there was a pull request, other people came and started talking about it and started asking questions like, well, what do we do with, can we do transaction? Can we use some features of SQL, like using between for a range or these kind of things? Or even more, if we give people the ability to delete many posts at the same time, do we also have to generate a view in the scaffold that lets them select many items at the same time so they can delete them? How do we deal with nested routes? Can you do post/123/comments/567. It's a lot of questions about that. So I saw all of this and I said, well, can we just step back from it for a second? Can we just see if of all these things that we're trying to build, we can just isolate one? So can we just take a single thing, that it's a single route like /post/1,3,4 as of today would route to a show action where the ID is actually 1,3,4. Does it make sense to make this route to an index, and those are the items that we want? Well, even something as simple as that has consequences. First of all, something like that already exists because you can pass IDs as sort of filters, so it sounds like duplication, and then maybe can work with index, but what happens if you want to delete? Are you going to have a delete route that accepts both a single item to delete that and kind of parameters to delete many? Is this really going to make Rails clearer to users? Is this something that get the purpose that we were trying to achieve? And so the story ends like the story began. David, who wrote the original post, recently said, well, perfect example of how something that seems obvious isn't always so, as it happens many, many times in our job. And so the end of the story is that as of today, that pull request is closed, but if anyone here has better ideas on how to implement it, please check it out. It's 15719. And also, if you really need to do batch or collection routing in Rails, there's actually a gem for that has a different approach, and you can check it out. It's called Batch API, and I think I'm on time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi. So I want to talk about underwater Ruby. My name is Chris Trigger. I'm Trigger on Twitter. I am from the Philippines, so the big red country there is China. On the right is Japan, and then there's the Philippines. So yeah, there are other Asian countries aside from China and Japan. So I'm going to talk. Underwater Ruby is like for scuba divers that are like into Ruby as well, or Rubyists that are into scuba diving. So this is from our second Ruby conference, which in the Philippines, which was just 3 weeks ago, and we had like 7 people who went scuba diving for the first time. So we had like speakers, some attendees. So as long as you're not allergic to water, you can go scuba diving. So yeah, and these are the clams in the Philippines. They actually produce rubies. They got tired of waiting for Perl to release the new version, so yeah, they produce rubies now. So they thought about PHP, but like clams and elephants, like that doesn't look good. So yeah, I'm inviting you to visit the Philippines. So it's not like you could dive anywhere. But so that's what I thought when I came here to Atlanta. But did you know there's a Georgia aquarium, which is just like a few minutes away from here across the Centennial Olympic Park? So you could actually dive there, and that's the only place that guarantee a whale shark. So yeah, because it's a giant aquarium. So yeah, a few people that are interested in underwater Ruby. I met SF Eric Twitter at RubyConf India, and this was a video from him. So he was in RubyConf Australia, and he went diving after that. So it would be good if we could, you know, like organize like during conferences. So he said like he went north to Queensland to go diving. Which you might be wondering if it's really north, because if you're a CNN viewer, you would think that Queensland is like on the south. So, but no, that's Tasmania. So yeah, don't watch CNN. So speaking of Australians, my favorite Australian is Phil Arndt. Yeah, so he went to, he's from New Zealand, by the way. So he went to RubyCon Philippines and spoke, and this was his first time diving as well. So yeah, I encourage you to check out RubyConf PH. That's our Twitter handle, our site, and like we had 2 conferences, and 10 speakers from those 2 conferences are actually here. So we have Amy, Andre, they're giving lightning talks later. We have Koichi, and then we have PJ, Rad, Shneem, Terrence Lee. So if you want to ask about the Philippines, like you could go talk to them. And then we have Nick Sutter, creator of Trailblazer. Like, so he'll give a talk tomorrow if you want to hear more about that. And then we have Zach and Steve. So that's it. Thank you for listening. And yeah, follow Underwater Ruby.
Thank you, Chris.
Welcome. My name is Chris Kibble, and I'm here representing Code Newbie. What is Code Newbie? Code Newbie is the most supportive community of people who are learning the code. So the founder, Saron Yitbara, could not be here. You may know her name. She's active in the Rails community. Couldn't make it to Rails conference this year, but she wanted to make sure this info got out to everyone in the room. So why Code Newbie? What do we do? Well, here's a pro tip. We just figured this out through months of proprietary research that learning the code is actually hard. So that's a free one. I might charge later for more tips. But even with a friendly and approachable language like Ruby, it can be much easier to learn if you're learning with someone alongside you. So if you are learning the code, if you want to help people learn the code, if you want to learn a new language, if you are a senior developer or a hiring manager and you have lost perspective on the challenges that junior developers face and want to regain that perspective, come talk with us. Here's some things that we do. 5 quick things. There's a chat on Twitter every week, including tonight, Wednesday at 9 p.m. Eastern. Talk about different tech topics. There's an active online forum, judgment-free. You can go in and ask your questions and not be belittled as to what your question is. There's a Slack community that's free of charge, and we've been using it the whole conference here. It's been great to use. There's a new thing that Saron is trying called Saturday Coding. So with this, you take your project that you're working on, you go online with all your new friends, you get instant feedback on it, you get people who are helping you with your project, you get real-time debugging on your project, and just knowing that there are other people out there who are facing the same challenges as you, the junior developer, can be really uplifting. Last thing, Saron runs a weekly podcast called the Code Newbie Podcast. Anyone in here listened to that before? If not, I highly recommend you give it a try, especially if you're a junior developer. She has interviewed many of the names that you've seen brief here, lectures in the RailsConf already. And if you look at her back catalog, you'll recognize a lot of the names. So we really hope you check us out. We're at Twitter at Code Newbies, on the web at codenewbie.org, and we really hope to see you around our community. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Reid Morrison. I'm the software architect at Clarity Services. How many of you were at the RubyConf a couple of months ago? Yeah, there we go. Right, at RubyConf, you would have seen that there were several, Matt spoke about how Ruby is designed to make us happier. So let's look at concurrency. Let's see how we can make concurrency that makes us happier. Hope you brought a couple of beers and some food. We're going to be here for a few hours. Oh, no, wait, that doesn't make us happier. So let's dig straight into it. Concurrency is hard. Some of the presentations you would have seen there, people talking about how hard concurrency is. Over the last few years, we've tried to bring concurrency into our application and had several challenges. So if we look at some of the options out there, we've definitely tried all of these, and the hard part every time I try to do concurrency with someone is how do I teach somebody to do concurrency? And I've had years of experience in doing concurrency, dealing with sharing variables, sharing data across threads. How do you do that? It's incredibly challenging and really hard to do. So if we look at a scenario, a simple example with pragmatic concurrency, here is an example where what we want to do is, okay, it's contrived. We just want to count up the number of users after a certain date. So let's say our system is really slow, and this takes maybe a second or so to actually complete. So wouldn't it be nice to take this exact piece of code, just that piece there, and run it in a separate thread? Now, how hard is that going to be? We're going to create threads, deal with exceptions, etc. So let's have a look how we can do that with Parallel Minion. So in this scenario, we take the exact same piece of code. All we do is wrap it in a block, and now we hand it off. So I have my main thread where everything happens, and I just throw off this piece of work and say, you go deal with that, and you deal with it for me. Now, to get the result is as simple as, well, there's the piece of code. Go do some other work. So while that's running, that little minion's out there doing its little bit of work, let's get back the result. It's simple. Count equals minion.result. There it is. As simple as that. You've now taken a piece of work, thrown it off to a minion for it to do it for you, and that's the extent of how much work is involved to do this. Again, you saw the other options. I mean, actors and supervisors, those are definitely viable options. But when it comes to how do I take a simple piece of code and just ship things off, this is how we do it. So in Parallel Minion, one of the objectives is it must be simple, stateless, so there's no state carried across. You just give it a piece of work, it goes and does it and disappears. Just like the minions. You keep them around for what you need and then they're gone. So, for example, the greatest example that we have is when a Rails request comes in, I have several sequential steps. I want to just take a block of that code, ship it off and say, run it up here. You just palm them out, let them go. Then one of the other big challenges of any of the concurrency frameworks, well, what happens if something goes wrong in that minion? If that minion dies, if it has an error? Well, in this scenario, it's real simple. If something goes wrong, the exception is re-raised back in the caller's thread, just the way it was before you introduced minions. So a very simple process. Your exceptions stay the same way. Your error handling stays the same way. You don't have to worry about any different behavior in this scenario. And then additionally, you can do timeouts. So I give a piece of work off to a minion, and if it doesn't come back after 2 seconds, I don't want to know about it. Or I want it to kill that particular thread if it's after 2 seconds. It does all that for you. And the biggest thing, this is in production. It's in a large production environment doing hundreds of threads. We're doing millions of inquiries a day, and each one of them is doing between 10 and 40 threads each. So this is well used and well tried and trusted. Minions, they log everything. So again, we could try and do some thread work, but we have to do a lot of work. In this scenario, when did the minion start? How long did it take to complete? What was the time that we had to wait for that minion to complete? In other words, my code runs, this minion hasn't finished, I had to wait 0.2 seconds for that minion to complete. It logs that for you. So you can go to production, look at your log files, and immediately see what's going on and how to change your code around to get the greatest efficiency. So again, this is all about latency. How can I take this long inquiry time and shrink it down by adding additional minions to do that work? So some of the other things, tag logging, if you've done that in Rails, it copies that across. If you have any dynamic scopes, those get copied across for you. All this is done for you behind the scenes. And again, it cleans up database connections. If you do any threading yourself, you have to worry about those sorts of things. Simple performance questions. I'm going to keep this fast. If you don't do thread pooling, you're looking at a 10 millisecond time to create a minion. If you do thread pooling, which is the default in JRuby, 0 milliseconds. Just grabs it out of the thread pool, and away you go. MRI, less than 1 millisecond to create a thread. Some of the considerations. So the big thing here is pass by copy. If you're going to pass any variables in there, for example, in the previous one, it passed the date. Pass in it a copy of that value. Don't pass by reference. There we go.
I got to use it.
I can take any questions.
Okay, 5-second wrap up. Go.
Sorry?
5-second wrap up. Go.
Any questions?
Hey, everybody. My name is Joshua Plick. I'm an apprentice developer at HashRocket. I came across a really cool gem called Puffing Billy. If you actually want to have all your tests go offline, typically you use a tool like WebMock, and in combination with VCR, you can pretty much save all of your external API calls, and that way when you run your test suite, you don't have to actually connect online and introduce that as a dependency into your test suite. So I'm going to talk about Puffing Billy. What's great about WebMock is that it intercepts API calls that are made from your backend. But the problem is when you're making a front-end API call via JavaScript or Ajax or something like that, you actually don't have a tool. WebMock doesn't intercept that call. But Puffing Billy is a proxy, so it places itself in front of Capybara WebKit or Poltergeist, and you can use that gem, and it'll actually make it so that you can stub out or mock your front-end API calls from your browser. So that's really cool, and you guys should check that gem out, Puffing Billy. Thank you.
Cool. My name is Jason. I will go quick. I am from Memphis. Memphis rules. Everybody should move to Memphis. There is something in the developer community that doesn't get talked about a lot that is really important to me. There are a lot of developers that have anxiety and depression. So one thing, I suffer from that. I cope with it. I live with it. It's all right. But I just want to use this 3 minutes that nobody else was doing anything to say that if that is actually something as a developer you go through, you are not alone, and I encourage you to find people to talk to. You can find me on Twitter, and not Twitter me, because that would be weird if you're like, hey, I'm really depressed. I'd probably not respond, but I just want to encourage people with these kind of things to not be discouraged and actually just fight this shit. You know what I'm saying? So, cool. All right, thanks.
Oh, come here, kindly bearded gentleman, whose name I do not know. Jason.
Hi, I'm Amy, and on the internet, I'm Sailor HG. I've worked as a professional programmer for the last 6 years, most recently 3 years at Airbnb, but I just left a few weeks ago because I want to focus on making computer science education in high schools better. So I launched a Kickstarter project called Bubble Sort Zines. It just ended today, and we raised over $60,000. Thank you. The zines are filled with cartoons, diagrams, stories, and they're intended to make computer science concepts more accessible to everyone. They'll cover topics like logic circuits and how calculators work, cryptography and how to send secret messages to your friends, caching, sorting, and many other topics. So why is this so important? Computer science and programming are important tools for creativity and for bringing about change, and it's important that these tools are accessible to everyone. And this doesn't just mean computers in every classroom. It also means framing computer science in a way that is accessible and inclusive to people, especially people who might not think that computer science is for them.
Oh, sorry, Amy, real fast. Can I have Ruby at Move people come up real fast? Sorry, continue.
No problem. So the Kickstarter is over, but what can you do now? I had a bunch of wonderful people donate zine subscriptions, and so if you know of any underfunded schools and organizations that could use them, please come talk to me and let me know. You can come talk to me to get stickers. And I just set up an online shop if you missed the Kickstarter so that you can pre-order individual zines or a subscription. And it's at shop.bubblesort.io. Thank you.
Thanks, Amy.
So I would like to spend a second talking to you about Ruby infrastructure. So Ruby infrastructure is the stuff that everyone who uses Ruby uses. Bundler, rubygems.org, the stuff that everyone as developers use every day. So there's a thing about Ruby infrastructure, and you've probably noticed it occasionally when something goes wrong, and it's that infrastructure has to be maintained. Someone has to make sure that it stays up. Someone has to make sure that the servers that let you download gems work. Someone has to make sure that new computers and new operating systems and new versions of everything still work with bundles and gems and all of those things. The thing is, most people don't actually do the work of maintaining that infrastructure. It's hard to distribute maintenance work across lots and lots of people, even when there are lots of people willing to do it. But to be perfectly honest, most people aren't willing to do it until something has gone wrong, and then there's 600 people who are all like, I'll do anything as long as you fix it so that I can go back to my real work. So I'm here to tell you about the people who do maintain that infrastructure. Ruby Together is a nonprofit that I started about a month ago, and we maintain Ruby infrastructure. The way it works is people who use Ruby, whether they're companies or individuals, join Ruby Together as it's a nonprofit. Trade association is actually 501c6. And so anyone who uses Ruby can join, and we collect money from people and companies who use Ruby, and we use it to pay for maintenance on Ruby infrastructure, as well as other cool stuff that is helpful for the Ruby community. We have some pretty cool people on the board. So far, we have Tenderlove, Sarah May, Steve Klabnik, Terrence Lee, Inez Sombra, and Joel Watson, and myself. We have cool people on the team so far. I am working to maintain Bundler and keep it working, and David Radcliffe is working to keep rubygems.org up and running. We have some kind of critical Ruby infrastructure projects to start with, Bundler and rubygems.org. We're starting to work on rubybench.org, a community benchmarking performance project, and we have more plans on the way. We've actually been keeping rubygems.org up to date with security updates, which is pretty cool. We have a new project that's going to speed up bundle install and gem install by a significant amount, and we have plans for a whole bunch of other stuff. So all that to say, improve the Ruby tools that you use every day, because your business and your ability to make money totally depends on this stuff actually working. And if no one keeps this stuff working, your business doesn't keep working. That's it. Also, I have stickers if you want some.
Hello, my name is Shane. I'm from Move, and we're hiring. I have a quick recruiting video to show.
Great when someone buys their first home. It's one of the most important things they'll do. So to be a part of that fabric, I thought was very interesting. So Realtor.com, we offer it on any platform. And then we have other brands that sit in different parts of the real estate chain. So we have Moving.com, Move.com. We have a whole bevy of a suite of professional software products that we actually sell to agents and to brokers that allow them to better transact their business. People make all the difference in the world. It's the products that really matter. It's the platform. It's the marketing. Those aspects are driven by people. You're not a physical real estate company where you own a big piece of land, or you're not a brand where you have an incredible license. This is about the people creating product and marketing that product, and that makes us successful. So people here are more important than anywhere else I've been. I think you get the special blend of backed by a large company with full resources, but an entrepreneurial environment, and in a really fun, exciting category. This is a place you can make immediate impact. This is a place you know is going to be here for decades to come. It's a great place to work.
So a couple quick facts. We have 40 million unique visits per month, 3 million registered users, 1 billion page views. We're 20 years old, and we have 200 plus engineers. And our tech stack is, oh wait, we are 20 years old. So we've moved it to RailStack. We do test-driven development, BDD. Most of our backend is now MongoDB. We use Elasticsearch, JSON throughout. And we're based in Silicon Valley. We also have offices in Vancouver and New York and a few other places. And if you want to look at the openings or apply, that's the tiny URL. Link to it. That's it.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. This lightning talk is about Rhoda, and Rhoda is a new Ruby web framework that came out last year. Rhoda is designed around the concept of a routing tree, and the routing tree concept was originally developed by the author of Rack back in 2009, and he created a framework called Rum, which unfortunately was not released as a gem and never became well known. So the fundamental difference between a routing tree and other approaches to routing is that when using a routing tree, routing and request handling are integrated. So as you are routing a request, you can also be handling the request. So here is hello world in Rhoda. For every request that is received, Rhoda yields to the block that is passed to Rhoda.route. The block is yielded a rack request instance, and by convention, the block argument is named R. The return value of the block is used as the response. So this simple app returns hello world for every request. Routing is performed in Rhoda by calling routing methods on the rack request instance. So here calling r.get with the string hello means that only get requests for the path hello will yield to the block. All other requests will not yield to the block and will result in a 404 not found response. You can nest routing methods inside each other, forming a tree, which is why this approach to routing is called a routing tree. Here, the block passed to r.on is yielded to only if the request path starts with hello. If the block is yielded to, hello is stripped from the front of the path, and the routing process is repeated inside that block. So r.get here will only yield to the block if the request path is hello world, and since it returns hello world, that will be used as the response. If the request path is hello RailsConf, it does not yield to the first r.get call, and execution continues. Then execution gets to r.get RailsConf, which will yield to the block and return the hello RailsConf response. At any point in any of these blocks, you can handle the current request. So in this example, we set an instance variable as soon as the r.on block is taken, and that instance variable can then be used inside any of the route blocks in that branch of the routing tree. This approach makes it unnecessary to have before filters all over your application in order to dry up your code. Let's say you have an albums database and you want to be able to edit attributes for albums. You have a route for each album where a GET request shows the form for the album and a POST request processes that form's input. Instead of using a before filter or duplicating code in both of the routes, you just set the appropriate instance variable as soon as the branch is taken, and that makes the album instance variable available for use in both the GET and POST routes. Rhoda is designed to be very extensible with a very small core that only supports the bare minimum needed for routing. The view method here renders a template, but it is not included in Rhoda's core. Rhoda uses a plugin system to enable functionality. The render plugin shown here adds support for rendering templates, including adding that view method. By loading only the plugins that you need, you avoid the memory and performance penalties for code that you don't use. Rhoda ships with over 50 plugins to handle a wide variety of use cases, so unlike when using most other small web frameworks, you don't have to recreate the wheel. Rhoda has plugins for features like asset packaging, template streaming, and sending emails using a routing tree. Like other small web frameworks, Rhoda scales down well to handle small sites easily, but unlike other small web frameworks, Rhoda scales up well with multiple plugins designed to make it simple to structure large sites while still keeping the benefit of using a routing tree. Rhoda makes it easy to start with a small site and grow gradually into a large site. In addition to making it easier to write simple applications, all applications, Rhoda is the first Ruby web framework designed with immutability in mind. Rhoda apps are designed to be frozen in production, eliminating most possible thread safety issues when using the framework. Rhoda makes it easy to secure web applications with plugins and options to avoid cross-site scripting, cross-site request forgery, insecure access, and clickjacking. Finally, Rhoda is also one of the fastest Ruby web frameworks. Using the R10K synthetic benchmarker, Rhoda is over 15 times faster than Rails or Sinatra for applications with large numbers of routes, but synthetic benchmarks are pretty meaningless. In real-world applications with a couple of hundred routes, I found Rhoda can be 50% faster than Sinatra or twice as fast as Rails. For applications with large numbers of routes, R10K has Sinatra using 70% more memory than Rhoda and Rails 3 times as much memory. In real-world apps with a couple of hundred routes, I found Rails uses 2/3 more memory than Rhoda. Have a slow Rails app that you want to speed up? You can load the middleware plugin into Rhoda and load the Rhoda app as middleware in your Rails app. Any route the Rhoda app does not handle will then be forwarded to the Rails app, allowing you to speed up bottlenecks in your Rails application while still using Rails for less performance-sensitive code. Simplicity, extensibility, reliability, and performance, those are Rhoda's 4 core values, and if you share those values and you want to learn more about Rhoda, check out rhoda.jeremyevans.net for details, or just come talk to me. Thanks for listening.
Cool. So I'm here to talk about authorization or gatekeeping. Pretty much everybody uses the Devaz gem, but with CanCan kind of following behind and also being kind of complex for a lot of projects, I decided to piece together some of my work over the last few years into a gem, and I called it Petergate. Basically, it's a straightforward and easy to use and read action and content-based authorization. It's an open source project and it has pretty good tests. So anyway, I'm going to open up my code now. Let's see. And let's see, MacVim. So generally speaking, so what this is pretty much a 15-minute, this is basically the blog you can build in 15 minutes from like 8 years ago or whatever. So post controller. So generally speaking, like if you're just using Devaz, you can throw in before action, authenticate user, and that will basically make it so everything has to log in unless you throw accept or only. So what I've done is actually set up roles that are similar to that. So if I go back to my gem file, I can just go down and add gem, Petergate, go back to the terminal and bundle install, and then I can do Rails G Petergate install, and that will add roles to the user class and also some code into user IB, as you can see there. So back here, user IB, you open that up, you now see it says Petergate, and it defines some roles right here. And it says right here that user is a role by default on a user. So then if I go back to my post controller, I can just set up so access, and I can say all equals, let's say, index and the show, and then I can go user equals all. And then if I go back to my Petergate demo, which is hopefully still running after my restart, let me kapow that.
Live demos. Boom, boom, boom. Sorry.
Thank you.
Migrate.
Okay. And now that should load. I'm logged in right now, so that works. Let me log out. And now I'll say new post. It should make me log in, even though I could see the index page still, which was what I wanted. Try one. Okay, so now I'm on my new post. So pretty much, yeah. What that's doing is just saying really easy, in an easier to read fashion, like access. Everybody can see these, and users can see this. I could say like admin could see something else. Could see, I don't know. Let's say all again. But then in my views, I probably don't really have any more time, but index. So like in my view, like let's say this default scaffolding link down here, I could just say if logged in admin, and then that would only show up if the admin was logged in. You can also put in whatever you want there, like if any, and then if any of these are logged in, if any of those are logged in, it will then return true, otherwise it will return false. And that can be used anywhere. So as you can see, it's pretty easy to set up if I can even do it under these bright lights on a little tiny screen. So yeah, anyway, any questions?
Nope.
Also, yeah, so the Petergate demo is up like right here. And the Petergate gem is right here and also in Ruby gems. I'll leave that up for a second. And then I'm done. Cool, thank you.
Thank you.
I need your help. I need your help to teach kids to code. This is what I usually tell the teachers, because when they hear coding, they start to freak out. But you guys don't. I think what freaks most of us out is teaching, especially kids. So why? Why should you teach kids to code? Because we have a problem. We have a problem in the US right now. 50% of the states don't even accept computer science as a acceptable math or science prereq in high school. That's pretty pathetic. And there's a lot of statistics on code.org that you would read that's really, really pathetic.
You have like 20 minutes. You guys can take it.
There's obviously a huge opportunity. We know that. There's more statistics on code.org that's crazy, and you guys should go check it out. So what do you get out of it? Why should you be teaching kids to code? Well, if you're a parent, it's a really awesome way for you to bond with your kids. If you are struggling with public speaking and communication skills, take it from me. I have a lot of fear there, and it's super helpful with that. It not only helps you with public speaking and teaching a room full of kids, and they're a very friendly audience, but it also helps you communicate one-on-one with a kid. If you can explain something to a 7-year-old, you know it pretty darn well. It also builds up a lot of confidence for you to be able to get up in front of people and speak, and it's just a lot of fun. Like, the kids look up to you as a superhero, so if you ever want to be famous or a superhero, which sounds pretty awesome to me, go do that. So how are you going to do it? Just make it fun. Don't bring up VI or Emacs and have a full screen of code. That's just going to like have the kids run away. So how do you make it fun? There are billions of resources out there. That might be a bit of an exaggeration, but there's tons and tons of resources out there. So where do you begin? Kids love video games. Start off with Minecraft, and you'll have their attention. If that doesn't work, check out Code Combat, Ruby Warrior. So Minecraft has this awesome feature called, or this awesome plugin called ComputerCraft and EDU. And what it is it's really fun. It's so meta because you actually are crafting a computer, and the kids learn how a computer gets hooked up to a disk drive and everything, and then you go into that computer in the game and you start coding in Lua in the game. It's super fun and the kids love it, especially when they get to program these little turtles that go around and do all of the crafting for them. So when their parents tell them they have to get off the screen, it's still crafting offline. Code Combat. I mean, when I first saw this, I'm like, I want to play. That's awesome. Code that with the kids. They'll love it. You'll love it. It's a blast. Ruby Warrior. This is really cool. The kids don't even realize they're coding object-oriented. It's really, really fun game. If you haven't tried this, totally check it out. It's awesome. And grab a kid, too, and teach them. If they're not into screens, which I don't know many kids that are, they'll love board games. There's awesome board games. Robot Turtles, they can be as young as 4 years old and be learning from that. And then this other game is really fun, Robo Rally. It's awesome for teenagers because they might look at Robot Turtles and go, that's a little childish. But Robot Rally is awesome. So have fun with it. Have fun with it and like robots. There's tons of like Vex robots. People mentioned FLL with the Lego robots. There's Arduino, and you can build like robots with that. Drones are awesome. It's a little expensive. And we heard from the closing keynote yesterday about Joulebots for fashion. So you got to think outside the box. Sometimes kids don't necessarily want to be doing gaming and things like that. But all kids should have the opportunity to code. There's also this awesome music thing that I found as well called Wiggle. And you play different notes, and it dances based on the notes you play. That's pretty cool. I haven't played with that, but you should check it out. Resources from the Ruby community are awesome. I don't see Ruby very often in the schools, but the community itself is providing a lot of really cool stuff. These are a couple of them. There's a ton of other resources out there. Just Google it and you'll find it. So what I'm really teaching here with these kids is not really just coding. It's teaching them how to be successful in life, because the skills they learn not only when they're going to these coding sessions are public speaking. This is my son having the opportunity to speak in front of a room of kids about what he created. Makes you super proud as a parent to see your child doing that. Problem solving. This is a kid teaching one of my coworkers on how to do some Minecraft stuff. Teamwork skills. I coach a robotics team for my son, and the teamwork is amazing. I just sit back and watch them crush it. It's really exciting. Wow, that was fast. So no excuses. Please help me and teach kids to code.
Thank you.
Hey guys. So it seems they have stolen my laptop. Maybe my laptop was too geeky and advanced for wires, but anyway. So my name is Nitie. I'm an engineer at Realtor.com. So I know being an engineer, the moment people see these names, it's like, oh my God, again a big giant. It must be so boring. Working on, I don't know, years-old technologies and all that stuff. But maybe not. Let's see. So how many of you have seen this commercial? No one? Oh my God, seriously, you guys should stop attending conferencing and start watching TV. So this one is about a guy who says he will never do something and end up doing that. That was me a couple of years back. I was like, I will never go and join a big firm. I will never work for a big giant. I love my startup environment and all that stuff, but I ended up getting on this train, and I joined Realtor.com. Okay, on serious note, what exactly we do, what exactly the technology team at Realtor.com do, we experiment with a lot of stuff. We break stuff, fix it. This is what we do. Not exactly, we don't kill each other, but we're nice people. We use the right set of tools to build up the solutions for our customers and all that stuff. So what exactly we do in these workshops? So none of this is new. I know almost every one of you are using this. I'm 100% sure. Most of the sessions in this conference are around these tools and technologies. We use it, but the thing which is different, we only have like almost like, I may be wrong on this number, but we're closer to 1 billion hits per month on our site. It's a small number, and trust me, with that kind of a traffic, things break. So that's a challenging part for us. I actually don't have my laptop. I wanted to show some of the benchmarks and all the stuff we are working, and love to discuss those with folks here. The people who attended RSpec, Capybara, and all that testing frameworks, what we are doing, the problems we faced, and all that stuff. People who attended the performance thing, I actually wanted to show the benchmarks against one of our projects with just 1 billion hits per month kind of a thing. So yes, we do face some problems. We do have some challenges, so we try to explore new things. We may actually break a couple of these things. So this is, I think, from session from today or tomorrow, I think today. I personally didn't went and join this. Who cares about Shakespeare? It's old stuff, right? If you want to know, like, what if Harry Potter wrote a code or Voldemort wrote a code, come talk to us. You've already seen faces of a couple of my colleagues. Come talk to us. If you want to know how to use this on the big websites, getting just 1 billion hits per month, what things break, how you can improve more on your performance, work more on your BDD and TD kind of stuff, feel free to talk to me or my colleagues over there. And that's all. I don't have my laptop, but that's fine. But thank you.
All right, so I'm Mike Virata-Stone, and I'm at SmellsBlue on Twitter. That's my personal account. And I'm also at Tabletop Tally. That's for a website that my wife and I created. And I work at onsite.com. And so this is Reading Rails, live from RailsConf 2015. So you can find it at readingrails.mike.viratastone.com. And I'd like to have a path like this, youtube.com/whatever/readingrails. But alas, I need 500 subscribers to do that. So I have a URL like that. So, you know, if you like what you see here and you want to go check it out, watch an episode, and if you really like it, subscribe, and that would help for that. Each episode is about 10 to 15 minutes. I post every Friday, maybe a little bit late this week, and I just dip into a little bit of code. And so far, it's been active support, just because everything else kind of scares me at this point right now. So without further stalling for time, instead of reading the Rails code as it is right now, instead I kind of want to read the latest commits from my hero of the community, which is Tenderlove. And so here we go. So this is one of his latest commits on the Rails repo. And so this commit here, I don't know if you can see it, but it looks like he removes a word here. There's like an exception that he deletes. So that's cool. And then he adds a test. You know, that's really cool. So test for that one word deletion, that's important. So no regressions. Whoops. So if we move back in time to the previous commit, he removes another word, gets rid of exception in this file. A few more words, he removes another exception. But this commit didn't have any tests, so maybe it was already covered from some other tests, but that's pretty cool. So going back a little further in time, he removes a whole slew of words. So we got rid of a catch exception and then re-raising that exception. So it was kind of, redundant code, so that's cool. So I just wanted to say, Tenderlove, your code is quite exceptional. So, but in all fairness, these small changes were clear improvements. They made the code better, and I'm thankful for that. I'm thankful that Tenderlove is a part of our community. So if we move back a little further, let's read the commit message. He says, pass a config to the route set. This way we can get the relative URL route from the application without setting another global value. And then it looks like he's removing an assignment of a variable, like from the app config to, and removing it from the routing there. So I'm not sure what matter accessor is, but it probably more or less is a simple accessor. So initialize now has kind of a new step in the process for passing in the config, which grabs it and then grabs the config relative to the root URL. And then the initialize can now take a config instance, and which it then stores. And the relative URL root is grabbed directly from the config. So no need for kind of storing it in the router and using it that way. So that's pretty cool. Then there's tests, and does a bunch of stuff I don't quite understand. So I'll just kind of move on from there. And then some more stuff I don't quite understand. Maybe I need a little more context in this code, but you know. And then there's that new method we saw, so that new, where is it? New with config, so cool. And then a complicated test that probably needs more context for me to understand, so I don't know, I'll punt on that. So reading Rails source is hard. It can be pretty hard. I've stayed in the easy stuff so far, but let's read it together. And if you want to check it out, readingrails.mike.virata-stone.com. And thanks again to Tenderlove and for all that he does. And yeah, thank you.
Hello, everybody. My name is Gabriel Halley. I'm a local developer with Pindrop Security. And I've had a thought prickling in my head this week about when does one start to feel like a Rails expert? And what does that look like? How do we measure that? And so I started thinking about that just the other day when we had the very first Rails Bridge Atlanta. We had a great smashing success run by the people at Rails Girls Atlanta. And I started thinking about students that are struggling and having a hard time, how to reassure them that there's a place that they can get to where they feel comfortable, that they're going to get there, that this insurmountable mountain of Rails is climbable. And so I started thinking about what an expert really is. And so you think about a person who is comprehensive and authoritative. Those are the words that stuck out to me. Particularly the first one, comprehensive, because it immediately brought to mind this whole thing, and I thought, what the hell are they talking about? So these are Ruby on Rails competencies. This is mapped out by Brooke Reggio at codefellows.org, and it's a lot to cover. This takes a long time to get a hold of, it feels like, and it seems like there's no way you can know everything on here. So it takes time. So how do we measure that kind of expertise? What are some benchmarks we can think about? So why not just time? Why doesn't simply the passage of time working on Rails work as a decent benchmark? And I asked myself that, and I thought to myself that experience isn't necessarily a function of time. Working for 5 years on a particular subset of projects would look very different from 2 to 3 years in a totally different subset of projects, just based on the quality of the code you write and the quality of the code you're exposed to and explore. So a couple of other talks today and yesterday have started getting me thinking about, what if we track it by the mistakes we make? Could it be the number of mistakes or how few mistakes we make? And I thought to myself, well, programming is a lot of trial and error, particularly in Rails, especially right off the bat. So maybe that doesn't help, but perhaps the kinds of mistakes you make might. And I thought to myself, typos are good, or a good mistake to make because they're relatively easy to fix, if not to track down. But a big mistake like screwing up the schema is relatively easy to do. I've done it several times myself. So then I thought maybe it's the time needed to fix the mistakes. How long does it take you to track down what's gone wrong? And I started to think maybe here we're getting towards something, because maybe it's not necessarily about the time, but it's about tracking down the mistakes and about the kinds of solutions we might talk about and the kinds of solutions that you have to find to the mistakes you make. So I wondered if it was maybe how hard you had to track down that solution. Was it a really obscure thing that was only like one post on Stack Overflow, or was it maybe digging into the source code of a gem or Rails itself? Or maybe you encountered an edge case on one of these platforms that even they hadn't thought about. So when can we start to feel comfortable with Rails? My thought was when I started to feel comfortable with Rails, I was comfortable thinking about starting brand new projects. When I started about a new web application I wanted to build, I could think about what I wanted to use, how I wanted to mold Rails to fit that, and how I wanted to design the application, what I wanted the architecture to look like. I could start to think about any kind of tools or gems that might make that helpful and that might get me there a little bit faster. So the expertise is not just about comfort. It's not about feeling comfortable with what you already know. It's obviously about continuing to learn and continuing to explore. So it's about having a little bit of that curiosity and kind of stretching your muscles a little bit and trying to figure out what's going on. So once again, I'm Gabriel Halley. This is my contact information if you want to send me any questions, comments, reflections on the meaning of life. And thank you guys so much for listening.
Thank you.
Hey guys, I'm Aaron. I work for Fullscreen in Los Angeles. I want to talk about something I really love, which is Bootstrap. Bootstrap makes it really easy for me to do things that don't involve it writing CSS. Does it for me. At Fullscreen, we found that when we were using Bootstrap, we'd have to do a lot of other boilerplate code. We'd have to write a lot of that sort of thing. So Bootstrap is great. You can start with something like this, and with a little bit of CSS and some stuff, hello handsome, right? But to do that, you gotta type a lot of code. Look at all those classes you gotta stick in there. Tenderlove might say Bootstrap is a pretty classy framework, So what if we could do this a little bit more easily? You got things like forms here. You got to do all this stuff like ERBs and the form helpers in Rails. Know a lot of the context that you're in. So we decided to make some helpers to make this a little bit simpler. So instead of having this, we can have this instead. It's all the exact same code as this before. It has the same effect. You can look at it. Looks great, right? What if you want to make your form look like that instead? You want to have that nice horizontal layout? Well, that's pretty easy too. All you got to do is change two things. Isn't that great? It's really safe to use. You can add things like modals. That was pretty simple. That's all you had to put in there. Dead simple. BH has support for a ton of different things. It works safely. You can just drop it straight into your code. It doesn't do any funny business like overriding default behaviors. It's really awesome, so check it out. We have really great documentation. It's fully tested, so we're really sure it's probably not going to break your app. We use it in production, and you can check it out by going to fullscreen.github.io/bh. And while I'm up here, we love making gems that are 2 letters in their name. So if you're using the YouTube APIs, especially if you're using version 2, because if you are using version 2 of the YouTube APIs, I have some bad news for you because YouTube shut those off about a couple days ago. So if you want to switch to v3 and you want a good Ruby gem for it, YT has got your back. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Aaron.
Hello, everyone. I'm Ryan Davis with Seattle RB. I'm going to talk about Debride and many-test bisect. It's not pronounced Chicago style, so it's not Debride. Debride is the removal of dead code. It comes with a plugin system. We already have 2 plugins to support Rails-style ERB and Haml. It supports Rails idioms for their DSL. And it supports whitelisting for excluding your public API. Here's a simple example of running Debride against the CLRB Rails site. And you can see here that we're running it against app, lib, and config directories. We are using a whitelist. And it is pointing out that the tox controller past action is probably not being called, which is true. Here is a not simple example. And it's actually going to take a few seconds just to render. If I go to Tenderlove's Works current Rails app, it is public domain, so I'm allowed to do or public open source. I'm allowed to do this, and I run against it. Come on, you can do it. I believe in you, Beach Ball. You get a lot of output. Wait for it. So, man, I am just killing Keynote here. I'm sure it's paging like mad. That's a little painful. A lot of those are false positives. and it's caused by overly clever coding. And to be fair, when we both saw this code for the first time, we were impressed because it was some of the scariest Rails code we've ever seen in our lives. Hopefully you're not that clever, so Debreed can help you. So gem install Debreed. Next up, mini-test bisect. Quick show of hands. Do your test pass? 2 people? Come on. Who writes tests and who has them pass? Do they pass 100% of the time?
I hope not. Those are some crappy tests.
Or do you have random failures that you can't track down? Hunting down random test failures and isolating them and making a minimal reproduction is incredibly difficult and sometimes impossible until now. You need mini-test bisect. It helps you isolate and debug random test failures. It has a neato partitioning algorithm, which I'm not going to explain too much, but basically it can do an n-way subset of your tests and figure out exactly what tests run in what combo to produce your failure. And here is a quick run of it. Ignore the fact that I'm preceding this run. I'm doing it just so that for the demo. So here is a regular test run as normal, and it has a test order dependency. We then rerun the test using mini-test bisect, passing in the seed. It's going to reproduce that failure as is just to make sure that this does have a problem and it is reproducible. And then it's going to start bisecting it. There's 256 tests in this, or 512, I don't remember which. And then we start bisecting. Neither side reproduces by itself. And you see it accelerates massively, and we get it down to 2 failures that when run in the right order cause an error, and when run in the opposite order do not. So, gem install mini-test bisect. Thank you, and hire me.
Thank you, Ryan.
Hi. I want to talk today about RailsConf America. One second. My name is Ellie. I'm a web dev, a developer at Thoughtbot. I recently moved here from Sydney to New York. And in Australia, we have something that's called RailsConf. Now, RailsConf is a weekend away hacking with friends, pretty much, in different places around the country. And I can't talk about RailsConf before I actually mentioned the godfather, which is called Ben Askins. Ben Askins started RailsConf in 2007 in a small place outside of Sydney. We had about 42 people come. And since 2007, we had about 2 RailsConfs twice a year for about 8 years now. So we are up to number 17 that's going to be in June outside of Sydney again. We do them in various places. It's around Australia, New Zealand, and a few places around the world. And we're trying to bring that one to America. So the idea is you go hacking together with friends. The accommodation is really basic. So it's basically a YMCA bunk beds with buffet food, really shitty food, and includes, usually, and it includes a bus ride from the airport to the camp and back. The idea is that you're going to bring a project with you to hack on, or if you don't have a project, you can join other people's projects and pair with them. You can work on open source projects, preferably not work on work projects, and maybe you want to play with anything, that's fine. As you can see, some of the places are absolutely gorgeous. We also do in the weekend. So you can do whatever you want to do. So you can hack on projects. You can go to presentations. You can give presentations. You can just pretty much just socialize and play games. It can be card games. It could be werewolf games. You can go hiking. You can go. You can go drinking. Drinking could be coffee or whiskey or anything that you want to feel like drinking. We improved with our coffee lately, as you can see in a few slides. The other idea of a RailsConf is also to be in a place that doesn't have internet. So you actually have to go and talk to people if you have any questions instead of just asking them online. Over here we see Chris Lloyd giving a presentation about CoffeeScript, for example, a few years ago. What else do I want to tell you? This is pretty much for everyone. It doesn't have to be just Ruby devs. It could be other languages. It could be all levels, beginners, advanced, whichever wants to whoever wants to come and join us. The prices stay pretty much, we try and keep them low so everybody can afford to come. So we do that with the help of sponsors. Anything else I want to say that I can't think of? It is done by volunteers from the community. So every time we have different people put their hand up and say, hey, I'm going to organize the next one in this city. So we get to go and see different parts of Australia, different parts of New Zealand. And we are trying to organize a couple in the States. So the next one that we're going to have is going to be in the West Coast, outside of Sacramento, in September, September 11th till the 14th. The idea is that you come on a Friday afternoon, you fly in, you take a bus ride to the camp, and then you have dinner and socialize with friends. Then you hack for the next 2 days. For Saturday and Sunday, there's talks there as well. On a Sunday, we have a demo night in the end of the night when you show off what you worked on for the last 2 days. And sometimes we have prizes. And then on Monday morning, we just pack up and go back home. This is one of the photos of when we had a whiskey club and everybody pretty much, the bus stopped at a bottle shop and everybody bought a bottle of whiskey. Yeah, interesting. Anything else that I want to say? I just need a couple more slides to go a bit forward. Nothing I can think of. Anyway, my name is Ellie. There's another guy here, it's called Lachlan. We're trying to organize one in the East Coast. We haven't found a venue yet, so if you have any ideas, that will be great. Come and find us, talk to us, and let us know what you think. And we would love to see you there because the idea is this is how we make friends and make the community a much better place for all of us. And that's it for me.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Gonzalo Maldonado. I work at Jammer, and I'm going to talk about how we screwed up microservices and a couple things that we do right while we were doing microservices. So first thing, I think it's really important to share your mistakes. I mean, they really make you human. So I think that at a higher level, sometimes we have a hard time saying it. We're always like, yeah, our systems are perfect, architecture is amazing. That's not true, and we screw up. So please share your mistakes. So we're Jammer. We're the enterprise social network. And the details are not important. What's important is that it's a big Rails app with a swarm of service apps. So basically, this is our one of our main screens. And if you look at the back end, it's powered by a bunch of different services that do all sorts of things, keeping counts, searching, indexing, tons of different things that you can guess. So that's it. Thank you. Well, no, we screwed up a lot, and we did a couple things wrong. And here are just 5 that we're talking about. The first one is we screwed up the transport layer. So when you're talking to a service, you really have to think how you're going to talk to each other. One of the things that we forgot at the beginning was like, hey, this thing about back pressure. So back pressure is saying like, hey, stop sending me things. I'm having a hard time keeping up. So yeah, we discovered later that we need this thing called circuit breakers, which Martin followed up. So yeah, we implemented them and everything was so much better. But at the beginning, it was so much pain that we were like, okay, well, put more servers on it. And we were like, no, we need to stop that. The other problem we had was unbounded queues. So yeah, at some point you had to say like, hey, this is the limit of the queue, and after that we need to stop getting messages. This is really important in RabbitMQ queue because otherwise you just run out of memory and you don't want to experience that. The next thing that we messed up is the storage. So one of the bright ideas that we had was like, hey, well, AP, it sounds like, that's what Amazon does, and the Dynamo paper, and it sounds perfect. Let's use it everywhere. Let's use it for all of our different services. No. Different services have different requirements of, operational. The second problem we have is we're not a database company, so as you can guess, we did custom sharding, custom routing, the consistent hashing, and that didn't work. So slowly we had to fix them, and some of the services actually went back to relational databases because there was so much better operational story for them. The next thing is screwing out the integration. So again, how you talk to each other services. Well, This is ways just to put JSON, but the problem with JSON is that it's schemaless. So unlike XML, when you could say like, hey, this is how it's going to be the contract, and it's going to talk to each other, JSON just you can do whatever you want. And yeah, there's JSON schema, but I haven't seen any libraries that really use it. So yeah, this creates a problem because when you're trying to duplicate all the endpoints, it can be really painful. You don't know what fields are important, which are not. And the second part, it complicates a little bit of integration testing, which you should be doing before even thinking about doing microservices. So that's a lesson that we learned afterwards. The fourth, which is a big one, is screwing up the micro part. So a good definition of microservices is that they should be able to be rewritten in 3 weeks. And we have things that we're reading for almost 6 months, stuff like that. So as you can guess, it just became many monoliths, and having 2 monoliths is worse than having 1. So yeah, don't do it. Another problem with this is that, as you know, having model dependencies are really bad. You don't know where to change things. You have really bad coupling. But service coupling is 10 times worse because, well, if you have one service at 99% and then you have another one that has an SLA of 99.9%, then your SLA goes down into 99.5. So yeah, the more dependencies you add, the more your SLA is going to get hurt. So you got to be very careful what you're adding. And the third thing is always think about how you're going to degrade gracefully. Think about what is going to happen when one of your services go down. The last thing that we forgot, that's the way of putting it, was monitoring. As you can guess, at the beginning we used things very basic. We stuck with Ganglia, and that didn't scale well. So we had problems where our metrics were slowing us down because we didn't know what was the situation of our systems, and then people were complaining, and we're like, no, it looks fine. And then 5 minutes later, we're like, oh no. So yeah, make sure that you're using StatZ and as fast as you can. Make sure you have aggregated logs, so if there's an issue on one of the services, you can actually trace between different services. I kind of highlight how important that is. Now I have 30 seconds to go into the last 2 slides, so I'll go fast. Things that we get right. We stuck with Rails API or the wizard for services, nothing else, nothing fancy, no other languages. We adopted Hystrix, circuit breakers early in Java, which is awesome. Get a DevOps team. You're going to need them. They're awesome, and they should be talking to you all the time. And we type monitoring to pagers, so every time that we saw something wrong, we quickly respond to it. Automate, test close to the metal, measure everything, measure garbage collection, and have test engineers that test at all levels. Integration is just as important as unit test. Should you do microservices? Yes. Read this book first. It's amazing. It's Building Microservices by Sam Newman. And watch this talk by Brian Morton, who's also a jammer. It's really awesome, and we'll go over more details than I can. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, and thank you for remaining here for so late this evening. You are the brave and the true. And I'd like to talk to you a little bit about something completely off topic. I mean, a little off topic, because, you know, rubies are red and they're similar to the planet Mars. What I'd like to talk to you about is a program called Mars One. It's a not-for-profit organization that was founded about 5 years ago, by a fellow named Bas Landorp in the Netherlands. Its mission is to establish humanity's first permanent settlement on Mars. It's planning on doing that, launching the first group of pioneers in about 10 years, and then about every 2 years after that, it'll send up another team of 4 people to Mars. Mars is the target because it has everything that we need to live permanently there as we do here. It has water that we could use for our drinking supply, for washing, for our food sources. We could break it apart and build our atmosphere. It has natural gases in its atmosphere that we need. Nitrogen, argon for living. It has gravity, 38% of Earth normal, but it has it. It's got all of the minerals necessary for building our own homes and equipment and establishing a self-sustaining society there. It has a day that's about the same length as ours, so we'll be comfortable with the diurnal cycle. It has a temperature gradient in which we can survive. The way this process has happened is that over 200,000 people applied. There's currently 100, 50 men, 50 women, and about this time next year, that number will be reduced to 24. 6 teams of 4 that will train for about the next 10 years to get to Mars and establish this first permanent colony. This is not going to be easy. The company needs to raise $6 billion. There have been studies that have come out of MIT and people like NASA administrators saying it'll never happen without NASA's help. The most common refrain is that the technology just isn't available. We've done this on the ISS, but we haven't done this on Mars, so we don't know if it's going to work. There's even been just blatant negative, degradatory media saying, this is a scam. This is never going to happen. I don't think that's true. Mars One derives directly from a program called Mars Direct, which was developed over 20 years ago by Dr. Zubrin, who was an aeronautics engineer at Martin Marietta, which is now Lockheed Martin. This plan was vetted by many NASA aerospace engineers. They felt this was viable. It could be operated for a fraction of the cost of the $500 billion plan that NASA itself promoted. And Mars One is a direct descendant from Mars Direct. It's less complex. It's a one-way mission. The colonists who are going to go are going to spend the rest of their life living on Mars. But beyond that, this is a huge opportunity to move us beyond the boundaries of this world where we've started, where we've been so far. The opportunities for societal experiments, gravitational experiments, cosmology. Can we find indications of life on another planet? Well, you got to be there to look for it. But we have 10 years to prepare for this, 10 years to test the technology, to try it in simulated environments. There are private investors who are stepping up, putting up the money to pay for that first launch. I think this is something that's going to happen. And the reason that I'm passionate about it is because I'm one of the Mars One Round 3 candidates. If you're interested in knowing more about this program, please find me. I think I'm pretty easy to recognize. Spread the word. Tell people this is not a scam. This is a real idea. It's got some solid technology and solid science behind it. Thank you.
Thanks, Pete.
Good evening, everybody. I'm officially the beyond halfway mark, so I'm going to invite you first to stand up for a second and shake your legs out. Yeah, no, I mean it. Seriously, stand up for a second. Because you've been sitting way too long all day. And all right. So I'm going to talk to you about mentorship. Don't sit down yet. Shake your legs. And how many of you, now you can sit down, how many people have worked as a mentor, has done some mentoring of people getting into programming? The 5 of you. All right, there's more people. There we go. Cool. Excellent. I want to give you a couple top tips about mentoring. I've been teaching for 12 years now, mostly computer science. So I started with Teach for America. I started a company called Jumpstart Lab. Has anybody ever used one of our tutorials for some of their learning? Cool. Excellent. Glad to see that. You don't count. And now I run a program called the Turing School of Software and Design. And anyway, how do you be a great mentor? How do you teach at all? Let's talk about 5 quick ideas for it, 5 great steps. The first part is to just decide you're going to do it. Like most things that are interesting or difficult, there is no clear prerequisite. You don't need any particular level of experience to start mentoring. We've seen student-to-student mentoring as effective as early as a few weeks into programming. So if you have been programming a few weeks, then you can be a mentor to someone who is behind you. The difficult step comes with consistency, and for mentoring to be effective, you need to do it on a regular basis. And so a great way to do that is through meetups, if you already have a local meetup that you attend, or maybe start an alternate session of a local meetup, or just find someone that you're going to get together with or talk with over a hangout. Remote mentoring can be great on a consistent basis. So maybe it's every Sunday afternoon at 3 p.m., something like that. But getting to that consistency pushes you to do more interesting work than just being a helpline. I think the biggest mistake that people make in mentoring is that they do focus on stuff that's wrong. Let me know when you have questions, right? It's the classic line. And questions are interesting. It is helpful to the person to get over that hurdle, but that's not really what mentoring is. That is just helping solve a small problem that's in front of them. When you mentor someone in programming, you need to focus on the patterns of what led to this problem or what led to this software being good. You know, we saw a talk earlier about reading Rails source code, and that's super interesting because you can start to isolate and understand like what are some of the patterns happening here and being followed that I can reapply to my work. You'll often hear people talk about like judgment-free mentoring or like not making someone feel bad. That's obvious about their programming when they're learning. But the most effective way to do that is to focus on the effort, not on the results. If you are mentoring someone and they put 8 hours into a little question that you give them, that's great. That's a great outcome, even if they didn't solve it. And if they solved it in 10 minutes, and didn't put the other 7 hours into it, that's actually not great output. Like solving a small problem when the purpose is practice, if you do it quickly, you're kind of missing the point. So focusing on effort over results. And the last piece, I think if you were here for Sarah's talk yesterday, you know, you saw those kids like super excited about working with AR drones and JavaScript, and that was probably the most excitement about JavaScript that was on stage yesterday. Thank you for the one left. There's so much amazing stuff that can be done with programming, right? It's effectively a superpower. It's easy for people to get lost down in the details of how little they know and how everything sucks and they can never build anything cool. And it can be very empowering for a mentee to see their mentor struggle. So if you don't know JavaScript, an amazing activity to do with a mentee is grab an Arduino, hook up some node bots, and try and learn something together, and so that they can see how you learn, see how you debug problems, and see some of the amazing things you can do with programming. The idea I've been thinking about a lot the last couple weeks is how mentoring and teaching is really compound interest. It's been amazing. This is my first RailsConf in a few years that I haven't been giving a regular talk. But to see 4 of my alumni, 4 of my former students giving talks has been really like heartwarming and feels like they can do much more than I can by myself. And mentoring is a quick way, like a relatively low effort way to really change someone's life, allow them to then continue that on and mentor more people. So strongly encourage you to do it. And that's it. Show up, decide to do it, be consistent about it, make a schedule, focus on the patterns of success and patterns of failure rather than the actual failures and successes themselves. Celebrate the effort that goes into something and do things that are awesome and rad and hard. Cool? Thanks.
Thanks, Jeff.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ivan, and I work for Paperless Post. We make online and print stationery for your that reflect your design. So we are hiring. You can check us out. But today I'll be talking about linters and how we can integrate them into our workflow. So a linter, in a very general level, is just something that reads your code and reports warnings against it. And some of the things that they report can range from, this local variable isn't being used, or there's some security flaw in your code, for example, like a SQL injection. So this is an example of the output that a linter will give. And notice that it gives the warning message, the line number, and the file name. So why should we use linters? Linters can help catch careless mistakes, things like forgetting to use the var keyword and polluting the global namespace. It can also be helpful for automated code reviews. How many times have you had code reviews where you mention something and it comes up really often? Wouldn't you want that to be automated? And also, it would relieve the burden on the code reviewers so they can focus on higher level things in your code. Linters can also enforce your style guide. So whether you like soft tabs or use semicolons for JavaScript, you can enforce it and have it consistent across your code base. But there are some challenges introducing linters to our code base at Paperless Post. First of all, legacy code base. Our code base is 5 years old, and there are already a lot of warnings in them, and it's not practical to go fix them all in one go. Also, linters is a very opinionated subject. There may be times where you disagree with a rule for a very specific use case. So how can we address some of these issues that we have? We can lint incrementally, and what I mean by that is just lint on your changes or your pull requests so that you're not introducing new warnings to the code. And how do we lint on your changes? So we have your pull requests, we have your diff, but we can't run the linter on your diff because that's like a partial file. So one way to solve it is to run the linter on a file and only report warnings that occur on lines that you've added or modified. For example, here's a pull request. I put the lint warnings next to the line, and we see here that we're going to report lines 7 and 8, but we're not going to report the warning on line 4 because that is a line that we haven't touched. But we run into some problems with this, and we notice that there are some warnings that our tool is not reporting, and it really boils down to this. For example, if we remove a line, the lint will report an error on line 6, but that is a line that we haven't touched, so it doesn't report it. So how can we fix this? What we can do is run the linter on a file before and after the changes, and any new lint warnings, we could report those. So for example, here we have double-quoted strings lint warning on line 4 and 7, and we don't report those because that lint warning occurs before and after the file change. But we do report the lint warning on line 6 because that's a new lint warning that we haven't seen. So just to recap, linters are a really good tool for you to use, and we had some issues with legacy code base, but we can address those by linting incrementally, and we had some problems implementing that, but we ended up using a method where we run a diff against the lints. So thanks for listening to me, and if you're interested in this kind of stuff, you can come find me afterwards. Thanks.
Hi, my name is Hsing-Hui Hsu. On Twitter, I'm so many H's, and you can recognize me because I wear a hat of a hat. I work at CareZone, and we're hiring, as is everyone else. I'm also a member of the first cohort of a coding school called Ada Developers Academy, based in Seattle. It's a year-long and involves a 6-month internship at a sponsoring company. And everyone in the first cohort was able to land a full-time position before the end of the program. So on top of my year at Ada, I've now been a real developer, like in the wild, for about 6 months. And I've been lucky enough to attend a bunch of conferences in like just under a year and a half. I've now been to 5, including this one. And these conferences range pretty widely in terms of size, and it's been really great to see the large ones, such as StrangeLoop and RubyConf and RailsConf, provide scholarships for newcomers or not yet professionals and folks who might not otherwise have an easy way to get their foot into the scene. And that's awesome. So just a show of hands, who here is an Opportunity Scholar? One still remaining, or who has ever been one or knows of anyone who's been one. So I've been one, and that's awesome. It's a great opportunity. But now for something completely different. Let's talk about measles. Earlier this year, there was like this big uproar about kids who weren't being vaccinated for measles. And The Guardian posted this great visualization for populations with varying degrees of vaccinated members. And you can run a simulation, and here's an example of the likelihood of an outbreak in populations ranging from 10% through over 99% vaccination rates. And then infection rates are what you might expect. But there's also edge cases in which populations that should have a higher chance of an infection are not infected, and populations with even a 90% vaccination rate are. But Hsing-Hui, you might ask, what do measles and statistics have to do with RailsConf? Well, it's this loose analogy that has measurable stats, and if there's one thing that I've learned from this conference so far, it's if you want to make sense of anything really, you need to measure it. So as I mentioned, I've been to 5 conferences in the past 18 months. For the most part, I've been pretty happy. Love the Ruby community, and my overall experiences at conferences has just gotten better. But I know that this isn't true for everyone. A colleague of mine did not have that experience in the 5 conferences that she went to over the course of 8 months. And as a result, she chose not to attend any conferences at all this year. The TLDR of Liz's blog post is basically this quote, that more women should be encouraged to attend and speak at conferences, but with the caveat that it is likely that the experience can be rough, that it can negatively affect what you understand your role in the dev community to be, or involve a lot more emotional work than anticipated. Many, hopefully most of you out there understand this reality. There are a few people, however, who know about things like the code of conduct, but unfortunately, they still pee on the hamster. The hamster is metaphorical. You might even be surprised to hear that last night, even here, a colleague of mine was given the advice to auction herself off to men to get a job. A little later, another conference attendee, whom neither of us knew, made a masturbation joke to both of us. Totes awkward. Now, I'm not shaming these people. I want to help them and raise awareness about how this situation affects our community as a whole. Because when things like this keep happening, you start to wonder what can be done. So let's talk about what can be done. So for example, here at RailsConf, there are 18 opportunity scholars. There was actually enough resources for more scholars, but the limiting factor wasn't the sponsors, it was the guides. Now, there are over 1,500 people in attendance at this conference, so perhaps there's a better way we can promote guide opportunities. Because the opportunity is not just for the scholars, it's also for the rest of us. It's our chance to grow our community in many different ways, as much as it is an opportunity for the scholars, not just to gain technical skills, but to belong to something. So one thing we can do as conference attendees and organizers is to volunteer for things like this. Another quick tip is that if you don't know someone well or met somebody from a different background than you, pause and think about what you say before you do. In the Ruby community, we pride ourselves on a thing called Minneswan. Mats is nice, and so we are nice. And we're incredibly lucky that some of the leaders in the Ruby community set this kind of example and tone. So throughout this conference, there have been a lot of really great talks about empathy and engaging our awareness when we interact with people. As we saw from the measles simulation, if even a few people forget about empathy, it has wide-reaching effects. When that happens at a conference or in the industry at large, it means those people who are affected don't come back or die of measles or something. So here are a few resources, the most important of which is obviously dogshaming.com. So many thanks to all the great women that I've met here at RubyConf, and especially my coworker who helped me prepare this talk. And you should come work with us at CareZone. Thank you.
Well, I'm really glad that I have everybody here today. So my name is Adam Cuppy. I'm a member of Zeal, and I have a very important lesson to teach all of you today. If you came to my talk here a little bit sooner or a little bit earlier, like there was just kind of like comedic undertone, but we've got a real issue, a real problem that we need to address. And I hope that you have this chance to really kind of think deep and hard about this, because it's not something that can go unnoticed very long. Something that really needs to get handled right now. And what I see as really being the real core issue is that nobody really knows how to give a high five. I mean, like, it's kind of an issue. I mean, it's like really kind of a problem. And I feel like it's my responsibility right now to address that. Sometimes there's just that right opportunity when you can really kind of embrace the things around you and, find harmony with the world. And again, it's kind of an issue, I mean, let's think about it. Everybody needs one. We all need one, people. We all need one, and this is our chance to do it. So, have you ever had this happen where it just kind of goes awry? Where you're like, yeah, bro, kind of. Yeah, I mean, this is why this is an issue. We need to talk about the issues. So I'm going to take this opportunity right now to address that with all of you. When you leave here today, you're going to leave more educated than you did when you came. And you should feel great about that. So I'm going to take this opportunity to go over that right now with you. So first thing you need to know is I need all of you to stand up. Stand up. Come on. You know how to do it, right? Come on, stand up. All right, good. Make sure to set your laptops aside or whatever, okay? And what you're going to do is you're going to find a partner. Yes, everyone has a partner. All right, you're going to look to the person to your right. First step is you got to make eye contact. It's got to be like meaningful eye contact. It's to be like right here, dude. Just right? Next thing is hand up. Now here's the hook. Don't go too far. Don't go too far, people, because it's not this. You don't like go all the way back. You're like, yay! Right? No. No. What we got to do is you look at the elbow. Look at their elbow. Okay? This is a diagram. And full-fledged, go for it. It's that simple. It's really that simple. I mean, turn to the person to the other side and do it again. Do it again.
Or with the left.
Or with the left. Almost. And if you really want to follow it up, you follow it up with a bro hug. You're just like, you just go for it. All right, so I'm glad that I was able to, really kind of address this challenge. I want to tell you that we have a little offering for everybody. If you go to stellarhighfive.com, you can actually send high fives to other people on Twitter. We don't actually collect, we don't follow it or anything. We just have it. So the team put it together. So, I wish I could have told you about this sooner, but if you see a good talk that you dig or people that you want to just send a high five to, here's a great way to do it. It totally works. It's a lot of fun. Eventually we'll put authentication on it. So, but until that point, dig it. All right, have a great night.